how did you fall into logistics?
That's a funny one because I genuinely stumbled into it. No planning, no foresight. It's turned into a 20-year career with the same business.
Being a really good sales rep and being a really good sales manager quite often don't go hand in hand.
Sales management is where good sales reps go to die. The best salespeople ask the best questions and then listen. 15 years ago, we were spending 200 or 300 grand a year with the Herald Sun. Now we advertise on Facebook and Instagram. We're not restricted in almost any way. We can offer a transport solution to essentially any business that's our best people by far are doing. The ones that get the best results are always doing the most numbers. So you're selling an experience. When you're able to tell that story passionately, it creates a buzz. I want your work. Give me an opportunity. Let me show you, what we can do for you.
Thank you for joining the Forward Thinking podcast. I guess just to give some brief background to our viewers. So you're at the moment working at Civic Transport Services as the National Sales Manager or Head of Sales and Leadership. Civic is historically has a reputation for being a national courier company, over 40 years of history. Yourself, as an individual, you've got, I think, about 20 years or so in the industry across sales and sales leadership. And then you've obviously progressed through to sort of state and national manager level roles. So really good to chat with you in terms of all things sales and sales leadership, really, just to kind of get your expertise on that. Do you have anything more to add in terms of, I guess, an intro for yourself?
Yeah, thank you for the intro. That's lovely. Yeah, look, I think what I would probably add to that is that I started with this business as a sales executive like 19 years ago, and I've really, worked my way through the ranks of what is a pretty challenging industry. So yeah, look, the intro is pretty much spot on. Probably left out the three kids and the wife, but that's a big part
We'll
of
get to
what the
that.
life is now. Yeah, yeah. But no, thank you for the intro.
No problem at all. Thanks again for joining. First question I generally start off with is like, how did you fall into logistics? How did you get
Uh,
into this industry?
that's a funny one because I don't really know whether I even knew what the role was when I drove I drove down for the first interview. I knew it was a sales job. I knew I was looking for a sales job. I had no real understanding of the logistics industry other than maybe seeing a couple of Linfox trucks on the road. So yeah, I genuinely stumbled into it, and within a couple of weeks, pretty much got my head around the whole gist of what we did. And I think the easiest way to describe that is that no planning, no foresight has turned into a 20-year career with the same business. So no, fell into that one.
Nice. Did you want to just give, I guess, a brief kind of overview on Civic and like who you guys are and what you guys do?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so we're a local metropolitan-based transport company. We have offices in Sydney, Brisbane, Perth. We operate over 1,000 odd vehicles nationally, doing crazy numbers, 8,000 deliveries a day. Within that,
Wow.
yeah, it's some crazy numbers. Within that, we have our head office in Melbourne, which is where I'm located, and essentially Civic Transport. We really pick up items from small courier items right the way up to large semi-trailer loads. And typically we do them always same day. So we're known in the industry as a same day carrier, and we specialize primarily in that exact service.
Just going back, I guess you started as like a sales rep and have kind of worked your way up now to having that national role and sort of looking after sales. Like, I guess looking back, what were some key defining points for you starting obviously at that more junior level and then kind of working your way up? Like, was there anything specifically, when you started, did you kind of say, okay, I want to be a sales manager longer term? Did it just fall into place naturally, or how did you
Yeah.
end up progressing to where you are now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I think at first it was just enjoying the fact that they were going to pay me to go out and talk to people. So from that perspective, I would say I spent the first year or so just diving in head first, meeting new people, networking. The sales cycle in the local industry is a lot shorter than a lot of other transport sectors. So, you could meet a client on a Monday, they're a customer on a Tuesday, and you're invoicing them on the Friday. So that sales cycle is pretty sharp. So I'd say I spent the first year or so just finding my feet, proving myself to myself anyway that I could do the role, and really looking around, realizing that I had some genuine opportunities within the business. We absolutely have a reputation of promoting internally, and I could see sales reps getting promoted through the business. So once I'd sort of got a bit of a taste of the opportunity, I definitely pivoted towards wanting to be in more leadership roles, and that's really where I've been over probably the last 15 years as a state manager and then beyond. So yeah, the opportunity definitely opened up pretty early. I think I was a sales rep for about 4 years until I stepped into that management role or sales management role and then beyond.
From my point of view, I'm interested to get your thoughts. Like, we speak to salespeople pretty much every day, whether it's on the domestic transport side or the freight forwarding international side. And there seems to be this notion that the natural progression is you start as a BDM or a sales rep, and then after a couple of years or 3 or 4 or 5, you become a sales manager. I think that's just what a lot of people have in their head. And these are people generally that have never managed teams at all, and they've never had any opportunity. But I think that a lot of people think that that's just the next thing to do, because it's such a different beast, right? Being a really good sales rep and being a really good sales manager quite often don't go hand in hand from what
Yeah.
I see. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that,
Yeah.
and if you see that as well.
It's interesting you say that because I've kind of got a bit of a saying like sales management is where good sales reps go to die. I think if you've got ability to do the deals and to write big numbers and you don't have a genuine interest in wanting to lead teams because that comes with all of the issues that go with it, I feel like your career pathway, although it may feel like you're not getting anywhere, the return financially as being a high performance salesperson can be just as rich. So my thought on that is that if you've got a passion for sales and you want to continue in that area, then maybe not jumping into management is the most important step for you. I think the most important step for the young salesperson that wants to get into more leadership roles is that it gets identified pretty early that there may be better leaders than salespeople. And I think in some respects I fall into that category where I have a team of salespeople that fundamentally have got the right skill set, but may miss some of the other areas of what that leadership role entails. And I feel like that leader is someone that's probably has the ability to do the longer hours because there's a lot more organization, a lot more administration involved. Whereas the high performance salesperson can generate, hundreds of $1,000s of revenue in 5 1 hour meetings per month. Whereas that sales leader is going to spend a lot of time organizing everything, structuring everything. So I think that a lot of salespeople do get confused in that. They feel like they're not, that they want to jump into management for all of the right reasons, and they're not wrong. But what they're missing is that
Yeah.
that they might not be the right avenue for them. And you can quote me on that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, I think because a lot of the time, the best salespeople that I know and speak to, in some ways, they're quite selfish in a lot of ways, right? In terms of how they
Yeah,
work, and they're very much a bit of a lone wolf and a hunter, and they're out there all for themselves, which is great because in turn it creates revenue for the company, and they're doing well. But when you become a sales manager and you're leading teams, you have to have the opposite the mindset. You have to be
yeah.
selfless, and you have to think about the whole team, right? So yeah, it is interesting just trying to watch that progression. What do you think? Like, you've seen so many salespeople come and go, and you've been a sales rep yourself. Like, what do you think makes a good sales rep, and specifically in this industry?
Yeah, what makes a good sales rep? Well, providing they've got the basic skill set, that they're a great communicator. They passed a test for me, which is, they can get along with most people most of the time. Providing they've got those two skill sets, the next evolution is the ability to listen when they're in meetings. I think a lot of salespeople think that being in sales or getting into sales is, oh well, I love talking and I love chatting with people, but the best salespeople ask the best questions and then listen, and they'll ask a question and then they won't move. They'll sit there and wait for that answer, which typically then helps them navigate for the next question and the next question. So I think that's a big component. Sales isn't just about being a bubbly, friendly person. It's about having those skill sets that I mentioned, the hard work, determination, the ability to do the numbers. Sure, they've got to be a great communicator, and yes, they need to be liked by most, but genuinely the best salespeople I've seen, and thankfully a lot of them work in my team, have a really sharp nous of the ability to listen, ask great questions, and then shut up and wait for responses, which really help them close the deals
Yeah.
essentially.
It's a bit of a numbers game, right? There's like it's high volume and very quick sales cycle in the transport space. How do you guys go about building trust with those, especially those new clients, right? That new
Yeah.
business? Like it's one of those ones where there's a lot of competition out there for sure. Do you guys have a certain approach you take or to sort of differentiate yourselves a little bit?
Yeah. I think in my previous answer, it probably opened up that qualifying appointments and having qualified appointments is something that we really focus on within our business. So 80 phone calls might only generate 5 or 6 real high quality appointments where you've asked a lot of great questions over the phone, which then typically lead into a more productive meeting where you're able to draw back on the phone conversation. You're able to ask some positive questions to understand some of the pain points. So I feel like that's a big part of that cycle, albeit sure, it's sharper and it's shorter, making the volume of calls so that at the end of a day, you can look at maybe you've made 8 or 9 really good contacts and you look at the maybe the 6 or 7 best ones and you can determine they're going to be the most productive. Maybe I'll get time to get to another couple, but I'm really going to focus on these so that I can build some genuine trust within that first meeting because the conversation went well. We got along really well. We've got some things that I can use to segue into the meeting. So, yeah, I think that's where it comes from. It comes from having a really passionate pitch over the phone where the person's buying almost before you've met them. And then when you meet with them, having that really nice continual conversation where you can pick up from where you left off and with a little bit of luck asking the right questions you can generate some solutions for that person quite quickly, listening
Yeah.
to maybe some of their issues. And, people are never going to tell you what's not working until you ask them and then they start to open up. Every carrier is
Mm,
amazing until you ask some questions that can really uncover some of the problems in the background. So that's where I think that trust can come
yeah.
from is, genuinely asking the questions that are getting someone to open up a little bit so that you can give them the solutions that they might have not even known were out there.
And have you seen, like with you and your teams, have you seen any shift in the way that you guys are approaching clients, say post COVID, or are you sort of shifting sales strategies at all? Or because I know a few clients are sort of, it's a tricky market and it has been probably for the last couple of years now. But yeah, I'm curious as to if anything dramatically has changed since, the last sort of
Yeah.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because we had a bit of a laugh before we started the podcast with a few technical difficulties here and there. I think that's one of them. Is I've never thought I'd spend so much time on camera, albeit something that I don't mind doing from time to time. So I think the approaching a customer if they're too busy it used to be I'll send you an email, but now it's like, well, can you do a quick 5-minute Teams with me this afternoon? And I feel like that's been a
Mm,
shift. And I feel most salespeople like to communicate in any sort of way. But in relation to the sales side, I would say that giving our customers and primarily they're watching the clock and they're watching the turnaround time and they're trying to make sure that the delivery is being done within a reasonable time. It's about giving them a dashboard and technology so they don't have to pick up the phone and chase a delivery, which when I first started, that was the primary form of contact. I mean, I think maybe 90% of our bookings were made over the phone, and we had a massive department of operations and customer service people. And now I feel like people are more reluctant to pick up the phone, and they want to have the technology, whether it's on their phone or on their laptop in their warehouse, a dashboard of all their deliveries and the expected delivery time. So that's definitely for me. I think most warehouse managers are too busy to be calling jobs through, especially the high volume
Mm.
accounts. So I think a shift towards that. And I would say that, maybe 80% of our bookings now are done via the web, maybe 70 to 80%, depending on which market. And it is unique. And
Yeah.
then, you get a
Wow.
different market like Perth where people still don't mind jumping on the phone. And I think their numbers are a lot less. I think it's 50
Yeah.
50 in Perth. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And like you mentioned, the technology side, and a lot of companies are leveraging certain technologies and even artificial intelligence. How do you see tech playing a part in the transport industry? Like, you mentioned that clients kind of want their own dashboards and they want to log in and see what's happening with the deliveries and things like that. Are there any, I don't know, cool technologies that you guys are using or that even that you've seen out there in the market,
Yeah.
that looks interesting?
Yeah, from a customer standpoint, I would say it's a continuation of developing that reporting side. So, it's common for a customer to ask questions, and they might ask, questions along the line of, look, this is our client list, these are the deliveries we've done last month, and they ask us to pivot the reporting so that it can marry their P&L so that they can get a genuine look at, what did we pay for that delivery? How much did we make with that particular order? But technology internally is a big factor as well. So the way we allocate our work, the way we recruit drivers, that's 15 years ago, we were spending 200 or 300 grand a year on with the Herald Sun. Now we advertise on Facebook and Instagram to recruit drivers, but especially internally, the way we manage our business, the way we manage our drivers' earnings, the way that we manage the recruitment process for drivers, and the way we allocate our work, that's shifted a long way from where it was even maybe even 10 years ago to now. And that's just continually
Mm,
developing where, we have some amazing features which are almost prompting our radio allocators to give work to drivers because it's looking at their route and it's looking at what they've got on board, and it's trying to notify us that we can give an extra delivery to a driver, and that delivery will fit on his vehicle. And that's phenomenal
mm.
stuff that we're pretty proud of, and it's all in-house technology that we're pretty proud of. So yeah, it's happening on the customer front,
Yeah.
and it's definitely happening internally as well, where, who knows, 10 years down the track we may only have one or two radio allocators, and the rest is all done via an automated allocation system, because I know that a lot of our bookings are done
Mm.
automated through a lot of our customers warehouse management system, so it's all becoming a lot more automated.
And you mentioned like the recruitment side in terms of how you bring on drivers has obviously shifted, and you kind of having to advertise where they are, which, like you say, could be Facebook or Instagram
Yeah.
or social media in general. I know your specific kind of remit is more on the sales management side. Have you seen much, I guess, challenge over the last few years in terms of hiring high performers and high quality talent? Like, is it getting easier, harder, similar?
Yeah. I think it's easier to identify good talent with, LinkedIn, with the aid of
Yeah.
probably more networking through the industry. Maybe harder to get them to work for your business. And that's probably that challenge hasn't really changed too much. But I mean,
Mm,
fundamentally, our business, especially within sales, although we work with some really outstanding recruitment businesses to hire at the top end, we do 80% or 70% of our sales recruitment, plucking young individuals out of retail, primarily retail anyway, and really trying to
mm,
teach them the way that we do things here. A lot of our best leaders now, will say that, I used to be a hairdresser. I used to work long hours selling makeup. I used to work in sometimes in logistics, but the other side, the warehousing side, and so we do a lot of our recruiting, not necessarily salespeople, but recruiting people with great attitudes and positive attitudes. So yeah, it's still very
Mm.
challenging though at the top end to find the high performers. Definitely.
That's cool. I love that you guys are attracting, younger people from different industries and backgrounds and stuff, because it ultimately helps create more people in the industry, which, as you know, is very much needed. Are
Yeah.
there, and you mentioned retail is obviously a big one. Is there certain traits, people coming from retail, that transfers quite well to transport?
Within, and I mean, just to give you a bit of background, before this, I used to sell aftershave at in Maya. So one of the skills I picked up
Okay.
there was to really talk to anyone that was walking around looking for something for Father's Day or looking for something for their partner. So that's typically the bit that I'm looking for is the retail
Mm.
person that's maybe greeting customers at the door, or they have their own sales budget. So they might get a small commission if they sell a certain number of jumpers or bottles of perfume, which is something that's a little bit different to the standard, I'm just going to stand there and hold the shelving up and just collect a wage. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for the person that really is compelled to want to help people rather than avoiding that conversation. And I get annoyed by these
Mm.
people when I'm shopping, but I don't get annoyed when I'm interviewing
Yeah.
them. It's weird like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I do find that
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
big thing. And look, what are we offering them? We're offering them a 9 to 5 role where they don't have to work Friday nights. They're not working on Saturdays. They can hang out with their mates on those weekends. And
Mm.
essentially, I'm also offering them a career pathway. So they get a lot out of it. It's a huge jump, and not a lot of them, not all make it, but we're offering a
Yeah.
little bit here. We're offering a career pathway, a cleaner 9 to 5 role. They can wear a shirt and they can come into work and feel like they're part of something rather than just a number in a massive organization.
Yeah, that's great. And that sort of leads me on to that next point, is bringing people in the industry. And you kind of just touched on a few key points as to why people should consider that. But what would you say, like, there's 18, 19, 20-year olds out there that are thinking about moving into logistics, and we can talk specifically around the transport side, but why do you think people should consider transport or logistics as a career path as opposed to anything else?
Yeah. Well, when I'm interviewing young Australians, one of the things I always talk to them about, and the beautiful thing about our industry is that we're not restricted in almost any way. We can offer a transport solution to essentially any business that's got a product to get to market, whether it's manufacturing or pharmaceutical. Um, we pretty much have no borders, and having no borders means our salespeople can have a really diversified pipeline where they might sell into areas that interest them. So they might maybe dive into a bit of retail stuff and look at sort of small, medium, let's say in the fashion industry. And, they're approaching fashion designers, offering them an edge over their competitors because we're able to offer them a same day solution. And we can put a little plug in on their website and, people can buy a product and have it delivered the same day and really spruik that. And that's something that our salespeople love is that in one day they could have an appointment or could have appointments with, as I mentioned, it could be anyone from a construction or a building type business right through to a white collar,
Mm.
could be pharmaceutical, it could be a legal firm. So there's just diversity, and that's the best part. I mean, I think the most frustrating thing about sales would be,
Mm.
selling the same product to the same type of buyer always. And our guys have got, so many different ways of pitching our service to so many different industries that it gives them such in a short period of time amazing amount of experience. And they can walk away after maybe their first year saying, "Well, I've had a meeting, or at least tried to have a full meeting with businesses from pretty much every section of the stock exchange." If you use that as a bit of a way of looking at our businesses are all categorized, and that's something that I'm always talking
Mm.
about in the interview process is that, you can go from selling the same product to the same buying group to selling an amazing service to pretty much anyone with a product that they need to get delivered.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's like you can sell to pretty much every industry you want. So
Yeah.
from that point of view, if you've got a particular passion or an interest, then you could go after that, which would keep it interesting. Because I agree, like if you're just selling the same product and service to the same industry over and over and over, it could get a bit tedious. Another thought is like your high performers in your sales team, do you see common traits among the top, call it top 1%? You know, are there key themes that you've seen over and over and over that make a really good salesperson?
At the risk of sounding boring, I'll give you two. One is the fundamental, which is work ethic. That's repeated over and over again. Our best people by far are doing the ones that, get the best results are always doing the most numbers. But if I was going to be a little bit more creative with it, we probably lean into what you mentioned before. They're the real they're the sharper end of the sales process. They deliver a message to a customer that is delivered with so much passion and vigor that the unexpecting client really is really forced to go with that, because saying no to someone that's so passionate about something is a lot more difficult than someone that's not. So I'd say that would be the ace of spades, or the ace in the deck. It's the ones that have got the storytelling ability, the sharp end of the spear. They're really pushing into that opportunity. They're asking great questions. So yeah, I would say that the creative, hardworking salesperson works really well in transport when we don't have anything really to touch or to feel. So you're selling an experience in some respects. You're selling what you've done for other customers, and how that's given them a level of satisfaction. And when you're able to tell that story passionately, it creates quite a buzz, and it gives you the opportunity to ask at the end of that sort of statement or closing statement, I want your work. Give me an opportunity. Let me show you, what we can do for you. So I would say that that's the one characteristic. It's the determination, the hard work, and then yeah, the ability to grab an opportunity and really get creative with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I hope that sort of gives you a little bit of an understanding of what I feel anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I guess shifting gears a little bit at the start, you sort of mentioned, you're a busy man outside of work. So 3 kids, I think, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
keeps
yep.
keeps you busy. How do obviously you've got a big role, a sort of executive level role, busy home life. Like how do you juggle it all? Like how do you make it work?
Yeah. I used to be a bit of a later starter and finish quite late in the office. So that's been a revelation for me. I don't know. I think after we had our second child, I started waking up at sort of 5:30, typically because there was someone jumping up and down in our bedroom. That's been a big thing for me, is getting into the office, 1 or 2 hours before the team sort of gets in. So I get a lot of admin done. But how do I juggle it? I'd love to say I do it really well, Sam, but sometimes it's challenging. I'm not going to lie. I've got an amazing partner at home, and she's a stay-home mum, if we can still use that sort of way of referring to her. She supports me. She irons the shirts and gets me ready for work in the morning. But how do I balance it? How do I juggle it? Sometimes we drop a few balls, but most of the time it's about just spending probably more time in the office in the morning, and maybe knocking out at 5 and getting home as quickly as possible so I can spend some quality time with the kids in the afternoon, or early evening, I should say.
No, I think you can definitely still use that terminology, and it yeah, it sounds great. But I think yeah, it's getting in early, getting that first couple of hours, getting that head start. Like I know for me, it makes a difference if you can just crack on, and the productivity you can have in those first few hours can be, no distractions. You're the only one in the office a lot of the time. Do you do anything that kind of keeps you, I guess, outside of kind of work and home, like anything else? Some people might go to the gym, or some people might meditate, or whatever it might be. Do you have any little thing, or is it mostly family for you that sort of keeps you grounded?
I've tried the meditation thing. and I just get so bored. I wish I could do it. I genuinely do. I'm sitting there after a couple of minutes going, I can't do this. Honestly, Sam, I spend so much time at work that when I've got free time, I'm just with the kids. I know it's a bit of a boring answer, but having seen how quickly it all happens, with my oldest son is about to turn 7, and we go back on videos when he was crawling and learning to walk, and it's going to happen so quickly. So I'm all in. There's dust on the golf clubs. I haven't seen a gym in 7 years, 8 years, as you could probably tell. It's all in with the kids, and when I'm traveling for work, I feel very guilty. So when I'm home, I'm all in. Maybe the one guilty pleasure is maybe getting in a sauna every now and then. I don't mind that. But apart from that, Sam, no, I'm all in. And something you'll probably be talking about in a few years with some luck, you'll find that you're doing the long hours and that
Yeah.
parental guilt kicks in and you're like, yeah, it's time to play Lego. Yeah, that's where you'll find me most Saturday mornings at 5:30, 6 o'clock is playing Lego with the boys.
Nice.
And that's a lot of fun too. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, between that and your job, that wouldn't be much free time between that, I would expect. So that's fair. And just, I guess, leading on to the last, couple questions that I typically ask people is, what would you say is the best piece of business advice, or even could just be life advice in general, that you've ever received?
Oh, geez, that's tricky. You get a lot of sort of mentor type people over the journey, but and I'd say fundamentally it's have a really strong reason why. And for me, it was securing my future, beyond work. So investing for my future. Now it's about investing for our family and to give my partner and I hopefully a really enjoyable retirement. So the why is really important. I think that's a big part of it because the next part of it is work your ass off. So have the strong why and then work your ass off because if you don't have the reason why you're doing the numbers, doing the hours, you can get pretty disorientated and pretty disenfranchised pretty quickly. And I've seen
Mm,
that before. I've seen the burnout where, reps are working real hard, managers are working real hard, and they're putting money in the bank, they're spending it on Teslas and expensive watches and they sort of lose focus on what they're doing it for. So the best advice I received was invest into your future, buy property, buy shares, whatever that might be, so that you've got something to as a baseline to draw back upon. You've got a
mm,
reason for doing it. The reason's not paying off the fancy car. The reason is I'm trying to buy my independence. And by buying my independence, I'm going to invest for my future. And I think they go hand in hand is you've got to get the return. And if you're working really hard, you'll burn out real quick. So, you know,
yeah.
put some goals together, start that process really early. And
Mm,
thankfully, that advice was given to me when I was young. And, I know it's a lot more challenging now for young Australians, but that's the best place to start is get the goals in order, start something small straight away and then work your ass off to get there. And every time it gets tough, you've got, someone tapping you on the shoulder, say, this is what you're doing it for. And that gets a lot easier when you have kids, gets a lot easier when you've got a mortgage and kids and, the
mm,
bank man's sort of there. But I think it's
yeah.
if you can make those little changes when you're in your 20s, the right moves will really pay off in your 40s and 50s and beyond. So
Yeah.
that's the best advice I got, and that's the advice I give everyone is start little,
Yeah.
invest something today, it'll grow. It's amazing, even asking some of the people in my team we'll talk about that. Like we'll have a bit of a brainstorming. How do we get our people more motivated? It's the middle of winter. It's the middle of it's 10 degrees outside. It hasn't stopped raining, and really it comes back to reminding them what they're doing it for, and that can be a really powerful motivation tool. And yeah, it's definitely the best advice I could give anyone. It's advice I'll give my kids. I hope they listen to me because I think it makes the right decisions in your 20s will pay off tenfold in your 40s, 50s, 60s. Yeah.
What's a random one, right? If you weren't in this industry at all and you weren't in your job, what career path do you think Michael Altamore would have had?
Well, that's bizarre because I got this job and then only because I didn't get a job in car sales, and that was like the greatest thing that ever happened to me in a weird way. I think it would be in recruitment. I know that's a bit of an
Okay.
odd one, but that's
Yeah.
the most the most enjoyment I get out of my role now is building teams and identifying skills in people. And I wouldn't have that experience had I not done this role. So it's probably not the right answer, but that's what I would love to do. And in essence, it's a big chunk of my role: recruitment, developing people. So that would probably be would have been my other bizarro world, would have been in that space. I think I get along well with people, and people follow the message I'm selling. So yeah, I think that's what it would be.
I guess just to starting to wrap up, is there any, like, I don't know if you're a reader of books or podcasts or anything like that, but is there any kind of books or podcasts or particular people you kind of look up and that's helped you maybe think about business or investing or
I think there's been so many that have all had their a little part of that. But it's going to sound a bit embarrassing, but reading the best Barefoot Investor, I think
Oh
at
yeah, I did that.
maybe 20, yeah, I think that's was the catalyst for then the deeper dive
Mm,
into what's this superannuation thing, what is investing stuff, what are EFTs, and
yeah.
so yeah, I'd say if I was going to just throw one out there, podcasts. I love listening to Diary of a CEO. He has some brilliant guests on. Recently had the CEO of Uber. That was awesome because I kind of look at the big US tech companies, especially the ones that are getting into the transport space, and I learn a lot. I learned a lot from that. But yeah, some really boring sort of finance books, I would say. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. These are all very,
These are
very
classic.
mainstream, but
Yeah, yeah, they're
they're
good.
classics. But yeah, it doesn't take much to think, oh yeah, if I just save an extra 10% of my wage, I'll have 20% of my wage put away. And yeah, so I'd say that would be some of the books that really just got the ball rolling. And then, you've got to get good advice, and having a financial advisor along the journey was the right decision a long time ago. But yeah, the podcast stuff, definitely love Diary of a CEO. Steve Bartlett does some really cool stuff, and occasionally listen to a bit of Joe, a couple other mainstream guys that I enjoy. Yeah,
Nice.
uh,
Anything else you wanted to cover off or have a chat about that we didn't cover at all? Or
not necessarily. Only that I hadn't watched some of your podcasts, and I think they've all been brilliant. If anyone's any questions they want, any help, guidance, structure, reach out. We're a brilliant business if it's for a sales role, but if it's just for some help and advice, don't be a stranger. If it was for something that I would say from a personal standpoint, it would be brilliant industry, work hard, learn the technology, ask to go out and be a courier driver for a week, take bookings over the phone, deal with annoying customers, deal with their queries, find out what makes them tick. And that would be really all I would add, is that the industry in sales transport is just such a small part. If you can sell the operational side of the business, you'll be very successful in this field. So that's probably what I could have mentioned throughout in some of the questions that you asked, is go out and do the job for a bit as well. Learn the other side of the role. Yeah, that's what I would add, Sam.
uh,
But
it's
thank you
good
for
to
having me.
no, 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 100%. It was really good to get your take because you've got so much experience and I think a lot of I mean, we're still at very early days in the podcast, but a lot of the guests have been more on the international side. So it's really good to get your perspective from that domestic transport side, which is quite different from that. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on and joining us. And yeah, like you say, if people want to reach out, I guess I'm assuming LinkedIn is probably the way to connect with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Cool. Michael Altamore, thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate you.
Pleasure, mate. Lovely seeing you again, Sam.